That's the only thing I get, and I'm not used to it on my side, is where it just says on air. That's all
Yeah,
I get.
yeah. You finally see how basic we actually could see
Yeah,
on our side. Like,
it's so
uh,
stupid because I'd love to give, and it's the same thing on Rachel's channel as well. Because there's loads of situations where suddenly you'll find yourself overloaded with stuff, and it's like, Jesus Christ, I'd love to send the admin over to you guys. You can't do it on Restream. It's kind of silly like that. Like,
yeah. There's well, I can see.
Just just check just check your YouTube's demonetization is turned on. I find you always have to do that
mm,
separately.
Oh, oh yeah, I know I
yeah,
do it. I know I do it like the next day.
mm,
I don't even know how to do it over live. Actually, I don't even know.
Just go to channel content, click on live, and it'll be the top one, and you just click monetization on. Hi Dennis, yeah, we're all fine. Get set up here slowly.
Yeah, I'm in charge now, Dennis. So things could go a little bit, could go a little bit awry. Um, but we'll get there. We'll get there. I
right.
just allow everyone a couple of moments. Couple of moments. I don't like how do I make someone else the top screen here? Do I just drag you up? That's
Yeah,
better.
yeah, you just check away.
No, no, go back.
I don't like looking at my face.
I don't. I don't. I like being just one of these the small ones here. Hi, Kat. How are you doing? Hope you and your
Okay.
mother are well. She's up. She's up at her
Oh,
mother's now, and she was sending me pictures of the snow. Um, I'm just glad I don't. We don't have American weather here in Ireland.
why is that?
But the
It's
weather
just,
here
it's
was
just that.
like I went up to Killarney to bring my daughter for training. It was snow in the
Mm,
mountains in February, which is strange. Sun, beautiful, just
yeah.
freezing. On the way back, it was
Mm,
pouring rain, sort of a really heavy rain. So
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
we've
it's
been
been
lucky
miserable
on the
here.
west coast. Like Kerry, where I am is probably the wettest place in Ireland. But in the
Mm,
last few weeks, we've been getting sun. And like
yeah.
Dublin, the people have been crying with getting rain now. We're kind of going, that wasn't a storm. You should see a storm.
No,
Yeah.
I we've had miserable here, like weather here up in Ulster. But like I said, we had the snow. Obviously, you could see the snow on the Mourne Mountains, just
Mm,
across the loch from where I am. And everyone was saying, "Oh, we'll probably get snow here," but I live on the Ars Peninsula, which is it's got the sea on one side and the loch on the other side, and it's
mm,
only 4 miles wide, so
Yeah,
you never get snow here. But apart from apparently a record of it happening in 2010, which now everyone 16 years later still refers to as in like, oh, we're gonna get
yeah,
snow just like 2010. You know, it's like this. It's like this doomsday event that the 1 year they got snow.
mm.
yeah. I
Your
remember
daughter's
we're the same.
archery
Like,
tournament,
cool.
is that on?
Three, 2 or 3, yeah, 2 or 3 years ago, where I live, everywhere was covered in snow for a day, except we
Mm,
got snow for about 30
yeah.
minutes. It's because we're too
Ah,
windy.
Jesus. Ah, yeah. You're at your art. What was it? Your daughter's archery tournament. That sounds like it's awesome. I'd love to be at your daughter's archery tournament. Go fire off a
As
few
long as the
rounds as
apple's not
well.
in your head.
Oh, aye. Get
I,
a
I
foot
live,
of snow
we
here.
don't have American weather in America anymore.
um, yeah,
Mm,
got feet of snow. Yeah, I mean, we'd be lucky if we get centimeters where I am.
mm.
You know, we get frost. That's
Hmm.
about the height of it, and it still shuts the country down.
Oh Jesus, yeah, I remember all that stuff. What was it called? Okinawa doesn't shut down until the typhoon is actually on top of us. But on top of that, the typhoon is funny because it picks stuff up and throws it around the place, but it doesn't feel as bad as the North Atlantic storms that hit Ireland. I think it's because of how cold it is in Ireland, and the extra kind of, I don't know, there's a kind of when it comes down to the Irish North Atlantic winds compared to Okinawa, where it doesn't seem very threatening until you see a bicycle, a big massive motorbike or something hit you in the side of the head. Then it seems very threatening, you know.
Yeah. Oh, Philip, since you were the
Whereas
last.
here, like in the southwest and west, I think everything that could blow away has blown away.
Mm,
So it's
yeah.
might have a few what's called trampolines, but everything else is.
Mm,
So we're all used to it. But the storms are getting
uh,
worse, I think.
yeah, yeah. They definitely look at it on the news. I've been watching the Irish news and seeing you guys having trees and everything blowing up, and I'm like, Jesus, thank God I left.
Yeah, we're not here for the weather. Like we're not
Yeah,
here for. Do you know what? And it's testament to those who came across with the Ulster plantation.
mm.
That they stayed. I
Those
think
stupid bastards.
I just think to myself, people who'd said to the political nature of it afterwards, and maybe they should go home. And I'm like, I think they've earned their right to be here.
Mm.
400 years of dealing with this weather.
But I think even the weather in the north of Ireland is milder than the weather in the Highlands and on the north of England, the east coast, because Scotland and the Pennines in England shelter Ireland from the worst comes from the coldest part. So the Highlands are much colder than here. Dear Smirigich, very standing. Tome Gama.
Bishigama?
Tome Gama.
Oh, what was it called?
How you doing, TJ?
Back to the Irish descents. Yeah, whose family's got who? It's the first time ever people are coming on and just saying, "Hey, how are you?" and stuff, taking their wee time and stuff. Normally we have Michal on the tread machine, and there I am. Go on, give me more family names. Give me more family names.
Just because I'm dealing with the technical side doesn't mean the live's changing in format or anything like that. That's why I put you on top. I'm just dealing with the technical stuff, so you can spend more time to cracking that whip.
Oh, I got 2 whips now.
I am not.
Why isn't the technical side fixed, Michal? What's this family, Michal? Why is there a technical problem here, Michal? Go on, faster.
Yeah, but I shouldn't. I'm not the one for organizing or anything like that. I have a brain like a sieve. I'd have forgotten about this live tonight if you had messaged me an hour or so, a couple of hours ago, going, "Where's the link?"
Where's my goddamn link, Michal? Direct lines to the Butlers of Kilkenny here. Oh, nice.
Oh, Butlers is
the
an
old
easy one.
Butlers of Kilkenny.
Must be a cousin,
Yeah, Butlers of Kilkenny are great. You can talk about them all night.
A cousin of Rua.
Oh, aye. He's a great little lad. We have to bring him back onto the channel.
Yeah.
I text him every once in a while. Have you kept up to date with Rua Butlers up there?
No, I mean, like I said, we text each other every now and again, just sort of checking in. And I haven't spoken to him about coming on, but it'd be nice to have him on. A wealth, a fountain of information and great energy. He's such a great person to have in the room with you. So yeah, I think that's a good shout. We're trying him out, and he's just an all round lovely man. So
yeah, he is.
Oh, and now I'm getting a text because one of my friends has been trying to get in contact with me the last couple of days, and I've been so busy, and now she sent me a screenshot of this live going, "You're on this." I'm working.
Why wouldn't you say the Butlers get proper settled down? Because I'm with my class now covering what was it called? We finished up the Norman invasion of Ireland, and we're just in the part, the around 1250 and stuff with my classes over on Patreon and stuff. And the Butlers are a funny crowd. They kind of rock up the Anglo-Normans because there were Normans that settled over in England, and then they, immigrated over to Ireland with the rest of them. But they kind of, there is a good chunk when the Butlers are kind of drifting for a while, aren't they? Especially when they weren't part of the original Welsh clique. They came over with the Bergs, didn't they? And then, the Bergs, once they hit the ground, the Bergs come running, don't they? But the Butlers, they kind of drift for a while before they eventually settle themselves up around the Kilkenny area, especially after the decline of the Marshalls and stuff, don't they? Like, at what point would you say that they got settled into Ireland? Do you know? Because I just feel, or maybe you just kind of disagree with what I'm saying about the fact that the Butlers kind of drift for a wee bit.
No,
you know?
because I feel like they come straight in off the bat because they are such close friends with, they were raised in court with Henry II. So they're already a quite established family. They're part of his inner circle. They're on friendly terms with him. So I feel like they immediately get to work to establishing themselves as this power base in Kilkenny, and they set up their fortification, their sort of heartland up in Nina, and they're already they're latecomers when it comes to terms of sort of Anglo-Norman families or these English families. They're effectively latecomers, not the latest. We would have multiple migration groups into Ireland from Britain. Multiple families would come across much later, but when you put them into this perspective of the companions of Strongbow, so they've got foundations to work from already. They've got the Fitzgeralds down the south, they've got the De Courcys, so I feel like that they can, and not only that, they're already working. Obviously, they get their name comes from a title that they were given. That they were sort of in charge of the wine, effectively, that the king would receive whenever he would come to Ireland for whatever reason. It was their job to provide ample wine. And for doing that, they were able to tax the wine and take a portion of it, of every sort of wine trade. And I don't know if it was in Ireland, but it was certainly off the southeast coast. So, yeah, I mean, Theobald Walter is the progenitor, Le Boteler, or something like that. So yeah, like I say, they're pretty well established pretty quickly. But obviously, they come out and they meet the same. So they've got the same problems that all English lords or Anglo-Norman lords come with the native Irish.
But I think there's one thing that differentiates the Butlers from most of the other Anglo-Irish, in that they're always very close to England. Like, they're maybe more politically astute. They're expanding. They're building a nice lordship for themselves in Ireland. They get the Palatine status, but they're always close to England. Unlike the Fitzgeralds, unlike Desmond. Although in the 1590s and before, some of the minor butlers were hanging around with Fiach MacHugh and rebelled now and then. The 9 Years' War, you have Ormond is the main Anglo-Irish lord on the English side. The same in the 1640s. It's only bizarrely, like in 1715, one of the I think he was an earl or a duke of Ormond, he becomes a Jacobite and messes them up completely. But before that, they're always they're always the closest to the English crown, and they're always very, very strong loyalists.
I just wrote, so I think this is a great message, but it's the wrong one that he's saying, but it's a great topic to put on. So J.K. Reber said, is already sure, that the English and Norman families are not Irish, and I could not disagree more. When you're speaking about, let's put it in context, when you're speaking about the Burkes, the Butlers, all these sort of English marcher families in Dublin, I would argue that families like the Burkes did more for the cause of Irishness, Irish identity, keeping Irish identity alive, towards the state of Ireland that we would have in the late medieval period, especially than the O'Briens, who are probably in your view Irish family.
Well, it's funny because the Burkes in about 1220 are married into the O'Brien family. So it is very funny when you turn around and claim that the Burkes aren't Irish, when from the get-go they're married into Gaelic families. And as you point out there, by the time you get up to the late medieval period, you have the likes of, what was it called, Lionel of Antwerp. When he's writing the Statutes of Kilkenny, he's literally thinking one family in mind, the Burkes, and how Gaelicized they had become over those years of the High Middle Ages. And by the time you get up to the late medieval period, the Burkes become even more divided and become more part of the land itself around them. And then branching into various families that you would know of, like the Williams and stuff. And when you think of the title, more Irish than the Irish themselves, and the way that they branch into various families in both Ulster and Connacht, yeah, 100%, especially the Ulster area. How many people have turned around and says the Ulster area is one of the most Gaelic areas of Ireland throughout the medieval period. So yeah, 100%, I would definitely say that the Burkes are definitely a family. And even with that very famous motto, have you not got that drilled into your head from school? More Irish than the Irish themselves. So yeah, 100% would agree with you there, Micheál.
I'm not going to disagree. I'm just going to make things more complicated. The English word Irish effectively means anyone born on the island of Ireland. The English were using the word Irish much before the Gaelic Irish. So until about 1620, there was no Gaelic Irish word for Irish. There was Gaelic, Gaul, and then the words for various countries.
I do believe I do have a theory though that they were getting somewhat of an identity of that around 850s with Mayor Shocknell, just because they were using kind of the title of King of the Gael just before that, the way that they're wording themselves in the Annals of Ulster, and then suddenly the kind of, I wouldn't say, I can't remember if it was re-Erin itself, but around that period there's kind of King of Ireland starting to appear when I was going through the Annals of Ulster. Go on.
This was the Gaelic identity, sort of Erin, Ireland. But the Irish people were the Gaels.
Yes.
The Norse come in, the Gaul come in, and they're kind of accepted in. But in the 16th century especially, the English began to say, especially to the Desmonds, to Fitzgerald, to de Burgo, etc., you're English, you're Irish, you're not English. And the old English, by their name, they said, no, we're English. But you're Catholic, you're not Protestant, therefore you're not loyal. There was one of I think it was Lord of Hote. He went over to Elizabeth. He went to visit the court. And Elizabeth says, can he speak English? And the guy was really, really annoyed. Another Anglo-Irish lord said, okay, I'm here. The Gaelic Irish say I'm English. I say I'm English. I go to England and they say I'm Irish. So in the 1620s, in Louvain, the Gaelic word Erenach is first coined. And that's catching up with the word Irish. So to say that the Normans, etc., are not Irish ignores what the word means. And here's another thing for you. Henry Bagnall, killed in the battle of the Yellow Ford, Hugh O'Neill's enemy. One of his nephews is executed in 1652, I think it is. By whom? By the Cromwellians. Like that branch of the family were Catholic. And then there's a song about 1798, one of those rebel ballads, and it refers to Bagnall Harvey. I'm fairly sure that Michael Harvey, involved in 1798, was a descendant of those Bagnalls. And then, like, more recently, the United Irishmen. If the Anglo-Irish, if the Anglo-Irish Old English are not Irish, what about Wolfe Tone? What about the Shears brothers? What about 90% of the United Irishmen?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, obviously, now that we started to get into chat and people are starting to come in, I think it's probably just to make people aware. I'm going to show your message here, Philip, just for...
Oh, yeah. I just posted that up just as a reminder, yeah. Jeez, and the lad saying in the chat as well, was unexpected, very unexpected for me, to be honest with you. I only found out, what was it, on Wednesday about the accident. You guys can film it in, because I only seen it on Facebook, to be honest with you. And I sent a message over to the family and stuff, and they only got back to me on Thursday to go share the message over on YouTube that Wayne was in what was it called, an accident. I assume he fell or something.
Yeah, yeah. So for those that don't know, just by context, because we're just kind of running, some of you might not be aware. Wayne McAuliffe was a long-time follower. Had followed and became a friend to many because he had been so active in the Irish medieval community. A lot of if you follow any of our works or Facebook pages, you'll see his name constantly. And he was in the background and the foreground of most of anything we were doing. He was a great character, and he had a real energy and passion for sharing Irish medieval history, especially the McAuliffes and the McCarthys, as he was connected to them. He'd even come across to Ireland about 3 years ago and met some of the community as well, the wider community, and everyone. He was just a general good all-round character, and unfortunately, like Philip and Owen have sort of stated on there, he was involved in an accident where he unfortunately suffered head trauma. He's currently, last I'd seen, he's currently in an induced coma, but with no chance of recovery. He is, for all intents and purposes, he is no longer with us, and just being kept, his body's being kept functioning by the machine. So, so we just want to take a moment to say thank you, Wayne, and our thoughts are with your family and friends, and I know you had made an impact on many people's lives. So, and you'll be greatly missed.
Yeah, if I can just butt in there, I woke up, I can't remember the exact day, and because Wayne posted a lot. He was always sending me videos to watch, and like a couple of times we mentioned about Ned Kelly. He sent me a wonderful series, an Australian series from the 80s or something about Ned Kelly. We found on YouTube. It was great. The whole thing was there. So I woke up, and his brother was posting on his thing, explaining he'd fallen, hit his head badly. There was no hope. And he, as we all said, in the induced coma. And to be honest, I still find it. I put something on my own YouTube today, and I had to write it 3 or 4 times because I just couldn't. I couldn't write it what had happened. It was just. It really, really shocked me. Like, I was just reading this. It's a book about early modern Duhallow. Duhallow is the lordship where the McAuliffes were. And he actually recommended to me. It was great. So I'm in a state of shock. So I did nothing on YouTube for the last 10 days or something for various reasons. My daughter has been suffering bad concussion as well. So and it just really shocked me. So I'm sending out my best to his family. We all are, and he'll be terribly missed.
Yeah, I mean, I just like I posted. I felt a bit guilty. I posted a lot more content than I have done in the last week when I'm not be here. But it's been a very strange experience to, not see his comments underneath almost immediately.
Yeah.
It's been a bit of a surreal experience. But I mean, I think you know, it just shows that the amazing people we have in our community, and you know, I'm grateful for the 5 years, that 4 or 5 years of his just crazy antics. I mean, don't get me wrong, once he had a drink and he was a character and he always had a drink.
Oh, he was brilliant, like, oh man, like, but the great thing about Wayne, he was never a fucking jerk. Like, the amount of fellas you come on and they were just a complete jerk, you'd be like, what the hell is this about? But Wayne was always in a good attitude, you know. He'd come on and he was just a pure laugh, you know, from beginning to end. And always seeing the positive side of things. You know, somebody would come on and cause a whole load of antics and problems, and Wayne afterwards would put in a joke or something about something that would happen within the community. He would always lighten the mood. He was one of the good guys, you know. And when I heard that Wayne, you know, that this had happened to Wayne and stuff, I was angry, to be honest with you, because there's so many people, outright bloody jerks. They are horrible people. But Wayne, on the other hand, he was definitely one of the good guys, you know. Anytime you needed the room to brighten up or anything, Wayne was there to brighten up the room. And it's just that the room now is darker than it was yesterday. I tell you that, because of the fact that Wayne's not with us, you know. He was 100% one of the good guys, and he was definitely somebody who brightened up the room for sure. Like,
I knew when I read it, I said, no, that can't be true. Wayne, stop messing.
Yeah.
I went out, in again,
out,
in again, you know, sort of.
Yeah.
Still, you know, I'm still struggling with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to know what to say. Philip, I think you said it perfectly.
Yeah, I think he would be. I mean, I will just touch that his brother had mentioned it, that his last post on Facebook was "Such is life," and that really, I think if he was in this chat today, if he could have one final message to us, he would probably tell us to wind our necks in, you know, and just get on with it. You know, he would have some crack, you know, some laugh. He would just be like, "You're spending too much time on me, you know, pondering and pining," and he would just expect us to just get on with it. And he would just ask around. I guarantee he would just ask a simple question, and it would be about the McCarthys or McAuliffes or the O'Nocta. He, you know, we didn't see eye to eye on that as an Ulster man.
Oh God, yeah, you, Jesus Christ, what a gobshite that me all, huh?
And he would let me know it.
Them boys in the north. You see, that was always great, because Wayne was always another Munster man. You know, compared to you boys up in the, what was it called, up the north, like, waffle. We're the true kings of Ireland, blah, 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 blah. If it wasn't because of you and the O'Briens, blah, blah, blah. Shut up.
Yeah, he was, reading from his comments, you know, do you know what? I will actually say that from when I first spoke to Wayne all those years ago, some of the stuff he got wrong. He was, I would say, he's part of the diaspora that was an avid, really wanted to learn, and he would come to me and ask me questions, and he'd come to Philip and everyone, Owen, I'm sure as well. But this was when Philip and I were first sort of doing our thing together, very early days of starting up. And you would tell him, you know, he would say, "Oh, I read about this, my family did this," and we would sort of say, "No, it's not that. That's come from third-hand sources. It's not reliable." Blah blah blah. Never offended. Never took it as a you know. He just wanted to learn, and he was just so grateful to. And then he really went on this massive. Now, I obviously didn't know him before the channel, but he could have always been like. But he really went on this massive journey of, and to a degree, he ended up being so knowledgeable on, especially the McCarthys and the O'Nocta, because he was constantly, I could not believe how much he consumed of Irish medieval history, and that he was sending me stuff. I know, and already said, sending me stuff constantly that I was just like, oh, where did you find this? Like, honestly, how have you managed to find this? And then he was telling me what he read, and I was like, where are you finding the time to just consume this or process it and then bring it back to me? That I reckon that if we could have trusted him to not say something that would have got us blocked, he would have been great to have on the live, isn't he? But he he was an Aussie man, and
he really was.
The live would have been cut short by YouTube.
We should really be having a whiskey for him.
Yeah,
I'll share a beer with him afterwards.
Yes, I think I'd do the same. That'd be lovely. So, but we'll push on if it's not too much for me. That I don't want to spend too much time for people who might not have been aware who Wayne was. But I would just, again, one final thing to just say, you will be greatly missed, Wayne.
Massively missed, for sure. Like,
there's a comment there I just wanted to jump in on from SKYB7BX. They weren't Irish enough to unite with O'Neill and O'Donnell to fight on their side in the 9 Years' War, except many of them did.
I was about to say that as well.
Richard Tyrrell, the Captain Tyrrell, was one of O'Neill's best ones. Down here in Munster, the Knight of Kerry, the White Knight, the Knight of Glyn, Lord Fitzmaurice, Lord Mountgarrett, a butler, two of the Earl of Ormond's nephews, and various other ones, as well as some of the oldest New English were on O'Neill's side as well. So if you dive deep, like most people say, oh, the Old English didn't like the Gaelic Irish, didn't like Hugh O'Neill. But dive deep and you'll find a lot of Old English, especially in Munster, on O'Neill's side in the 9 Years' War.
Yeah, for sure. Because I was about to say that about the Barrys. They were in a very funny position over around just north of Mallup and Fermoy, wasn't it? The Barrys were up around that whole area and stuff. And O'Neill was constantly writing them letters, asking them to jump onto his side of the fence.
Well, Lord Barry basically never did.
Yeah, he didn't he? That was very funny. Why didn't he jump side?
There's a lot of politics down there, and some of Lord Barry didn't like a lot of, especially some of the Fitzgeralds. There's I think she's a professor in Liverpool, Ruth Canning. She's written a book on the Old English, especially the Pale Old English, the Palesmen in the 9 Years' War. They had this ideology, this belief that they had spent their blood defending the Old English state. So they had difficulties with, and like they said, okay, we're Catholic, but they had big difficulties rebelling against their queen. So there's a lot of stuff there. It's very detailed.
Yeah, it's a funny one, all right. Like, especially with the fact that the world in England is changing a lot, because the Tudors, they spent a good, since Henry VIII in about 1530, well, even before that, actually, just before when the Henry VII had taken over, they had spent a lot of time getting rid of all the old nobles inside of England. And I do wonder, when they were going into the Tudor conquest of Ireland, was one of their main gigs to try to remove all, as we call them now today, the Old English, try to remove the Old English and then reinstall their own little puppets inside of Ireland? Is that ultimately their goal?
Not all the Old English. The butlers, because they were quite well in. Basically, the Tudors didn't like what they called overmighty lords, whether they were Old English or Gaelic Irish, especially if they were Catholic. So, like, but at the same time, if you look at people like the Bagnalls and Bingham, these are Elizabeth's officials. They're not the highest ranking, but they're quite high ranking. And they set up their own minor lordships. They're building lordships, and they're let away with it. They were Protestant, they were on the English side, so they were let away with it. Elizabeth didn't like the Irish towns like Clonmel, etc. They had privileges going way back. They had more privileges, more autonomy than most English towns and cities. The Elizabethans and the Tudors were very centralizing. Someone is asking about Cyril Fall's Elizabeth's Irish Wars. I do not recommend that book. It has some, but it's a very biased. It's very imperial. I don't like the word imperialist, but that's kind of what it's an imperialist history. Especially when he's right, like he's grudgingly likes Hugh O'Neill. What he writes about now, Neil Garbo Dunn, was ridiculous. And I think he writes some stupid stuff about Shane O'Neill as well. It's like a good old. It's kind of like Kipling in a way, Kipling-esque history.
But that book was written in the 1950s when Whig history was kind of at its peak. I think that's the problem. When is it that we start to go against Whig history? Is it not until, and anybody who's wondering about Whig history, it's basically British imperialist history. When is it, at what point do we go against, as Irish people start to go against Whig history and start to write against Whig history to kind of remove this? Doesn't that happen until about the 1980s, the 1990s that we start to erase a lot of this garbage?
Like in terms of the 16th century, like you have Hayes McCoy who writes interesting stuff, but his stuff still almost he doesn't go into it. Then in the 1980s, 1990s, you have Canny and other people popping up with some good stuff. Hiram Morgan's book on the 9 Years' War is excellent. Most of these guys would have done their doctorates in England, so they received kind of the Anglo historical training, and that they knew how to go into documents, they knew their sources, etc. But they from the 1980s, 1990s onwards, they begin to produce a new style of history. They break away from this idea of, if you don't know what Whig history is, it's this progression. And they start showing, hold on, things are different. They also, many of them break away from a nationalistic point of view. And they start working with sources and presenting very good history, a history that is very complicated, very detailed, very dynamic, and I find much more interesting than most other stuff.
For sure. Whig history is the biggest problem I have with Whig history is the fact that it looks not just into Irish history, but just history in general from a very kind of nationalist perspective, which kind of really ruins it for me. And I don't want to sound bad to chat as well, but anytime I make a statement and somebody comes at me from a very nationalist perspective of we Irish, I'm just like, oh, jeez, here we go, like, stop. Because especially like if you take Battle of Clontarf, that's one of the most nationalist rewritten pieces of history in Ireland. They always kind of write this image of Brian Boru with the tricolour Irish flag going into the Battle of Clontarf, fighting against Sitrick Silkenbeard, and Sitrick on the walls of Clontarf waving a Norwegian flag. And it's like, right, first and foremost, Sitrick Silkenbeard, his family, the Eamers at that point, had lived in Ireland for almost 200 years at that point. And even when their nobility is kicked out of Ireland around the 890s, they don't return to Norway. Like there's no, other than connections of trade and business deals, there's no family connections between the Eamers and Norway and Iceland. There is don't get me wrong, there is Irish families inside of Dublin that do have Norwegian and Icelandic connections, but the Eamers don't have it. When they're kicked out of Ireland, they're straight over to the Isle of Man. When a Sihtric Silkenbeard is looking for assistance, he's going to York, he's going to the Isle of Man, he's going to Scotland, he's going to the Isles just off of Scotland. He's not going to Norway, he's not going to Iceland. The Eamers don't have family connections in those regions. They're Gael. They're, Hiberno-Scandinavian families, but they're not Scandinavian families anymore. They just don't have that connection with Norway and Iceland. The way that, and don't get me wrong, like if someone's going to point out other families that do have those connections, yeah, I fully do agree. Aid, the Deep-Minded, for example, when she leaves Dublin and goes up to Iceland, her generations of families continue having that link between Iceland, the Orkney Isles, and Dublin and Leinster. When anytime they talk about how great their lineage is, they highlight their Icelandic connections. But another thing to note as well is that they're looking at themselves as family first. They don't have any idea about this flag of Norway that they're meant to be flying into battle and stuff. It just doesn't exist. There's no family, what is it called? There's no nationalist identity that's linking Dublin, Norway, and Iceland together. What you do have is confederation of war bands that come together, and a form of like clan pride and stuff. That's what you kind of see with this kind of Hiberno-Scandinavian link from Dublin to Iceland to Norway. But there's no nationalist identity kind of gluing them all together. And same vice versa with the Irish going into the Battle of Clontarf. There's no kind of nationalist identity that's linking the Enales, linking the Dalcash. There is confederations of to it, but I can't see any nationalist identity there at all. Like,
yeah, I think I generally agree with you. But just to add on to that, the main problem with Whig or Whiggish type history is that you take a country, say Germany, say Italy, in the 20th century, and you work backwards. Sort of, because Germany is a country now, you go to medieval history, and Germany is always going to be a country. No. Italy is always going to be a country. No. Until the 1850s, the Austrians had a large part of Italy. In the 16th century, part of the 17th century, the 15th century, a large amount of Italy was split into city-states, but then the Spanish Habsburg controlled a large amount of history. The Kingdom of Savoy was a Habsburg kind of satellite state. And if you look at that in 1600 and 1500, the chances of that becoming Italy are tiny. You can't the history of that Kingdom of Savoy as Italian history. If you take the 9th, 10th century in England, where a huge amount of the north of England was under Norse control, where there were people speaking Norse languages, is that English history? Sort of, it's not definite. It is English history, but for other reasons. But like, if you're studying a village, if you're studying York, you can't study York. You can't produce good history on early medieval York, presuming it's always going to become English. And then, even worse, presuming it's always going to be Protestant, and they always were Protestant as such. Sort of, no. There's so many complications with history, like Richard III getting killed. Then along comes the Tudors. Elizabeth has no heirs, and what's his name? James inherits. The same in like the Habsburgs inheriting the Low Countries, essentially, because I can't remember which of the Burgundians got killed in a battle. So much of history comes down to mad accidents. if, for example, Don Juan de la Killa had been a bit more patient, we might all be speaking Irish now.
Oh, yeah, it is a very funny one, all right. But I just want to disagree with the comment section as well off Baru. Sorry about this. I'm just going to have to use you as a punching bag for a wee bit. Yes, but at the time, it was very pagan versus Christian. If you're talking about the battle itself, the Battle of Clontarf, no, 100% it was not. Because Sihtric going into the battle was Roman Christian. He wasn't even insular Christian going into that battle. He was solidly Roman Christian. After the battle itself, a few years afterwards, he would even go on pilgrimage to Rome. Even on top of that, at that point, now just to pull back so people aren't getting lost, at the very start, you do have monks who are writing the history, and they're constantly referring to Viking raiders, pirate raiders inside of Ireland as heathens. They are heathens. They when they're saying heathens, this year and last year, a lot of academics are pointing out when Irish monks are referring to them as heathens. They're basically saying that they're denying Christ. These people are denying Christ. They're denying the word of God, right? That's what a lot of academics are saying last year and this year as well on various podcasts. For example, what was it called? The Medieval Irish podcast over on Spotify. And it's the same with God Medieval as well, where guests have come on and highlighted the fact that Irish monks at the time, when they're writing the word heathen, they're basically saying that these people are denying Christ, which is a politically motivating that monks are writing this, because have monks actually gone out and attempted to tell these people about Christ, or are they writing this from a propaganda perspective to demonize the raiders who are going around the place and targeting monasteries? They're going into monasteries and they're burning monasteries down from around 793 to around 836 is when we see the peak of Viking raids going in and burning monastic settlements down, right? But at the same time, you have to remember that there is fighting between, 793 to around 836, between the men of Munster and the men of the Enel, where they're also burning monastic settlements down. Why are they burning monastic settlements? Because there is a disagreement over the law of St. Patrick and the law of St. Columba, where you have monastic settlements disputing amongst themselves if they should centralize under the law of St. Patrick or if they should keep themselves decentralized under the law of St. Columba. And because of that, the men of Munster and the men of the Enel are burning monastic settlements as well. In fact, when people from the coastal areas come in and look for help off of the High King of Ireland at the time, Philmouth McCrivcon, he turns around and says, hey, that's God's judgment, that's what you deserve. So it's an assumption that those monastic settlements in the coast were part of the law of St. Columba, that they, because they were out in the coastal areas, benefit from being independent to themselves rather than giving a tribute to Armagh that was pushing for the law of St. Patrick and recognised a Munsterman as King of Ireland at the time. So just bear that in mind, that the monastic settlements were burning each other down as well. You also have a very strange word that appears at the time, which is Gál Gael, which directly translates to foreign Irish. Why would you have a separate word for the men of Luckland, the men from Norway, and have a different word again called Gál Gael, foreign Irish? What does this word foreign Irish mean? We can only speculate, but we do assume that these were either the children of Norse, that's what some people assume, or we assume that these may be Gael Irish people that went foreign from the community and went off and became Vikings, that they got sick of doing some farming one day and they just went off and became a Viking themselves. So around 820, around the annals, you have the word Gál Gael that suddenly appears, which if you're into linguistic side of things and you're like, oh, that sounds similar to Galloglass later on, around the High Middle Ages, yeah, you're right. There is a similar word between Gál Gael and Galloglass, the anglicised word Galloglass later on. So that's definitely an interesting one to note. But basically, what I'm saying here is it's actually far more complicated. And it gets even more complicated again around the 850s to 860s. Why does it get more complicated? Because of the fact that in around the north of England, when the Hiberno Scandinavians are invading in those regions and attacking York, when they're putting up what was it called? Crosses. They're putting up crosses with not only Norse gods on it, but they're also putting in symbols of Jesus. So that means they're worshipping both Loki, Thor, and Jesus Christ himself. They're also, if you go over to Iceland, they have crosses on it. And the crosses also have the symbol of Fretnir, which is a wolf god in the Iceland, was it the Norse gods as well? So they're worshipping both this, what was it called, Norse paganism, and they're worshipping Jesus Christ as well. So it's actually quite complicated. Remembering now, heathen is basically saying that they're denying Christ. So it is quite complicated inside of Ireland. So this whole narrative of pagan versus Christian, very complicated. But at the same time, it is a part of the Battle of Clontarf narrative, because if you read the book, The War of the Irish and the Foreigners, to try to justify the O'Briens attacking Dublin, they do try to demonize Sitrick as much as possible, and basically referred to him as a heathen, he's a denier of Christ, he's a pagan, he worships all these gods and stuff. So I'm not going to turn around and saying it's not part of the propaganda, but I'm trying to say that it is actually quite complicated. But Sitrick himself is Roman Christian. He is not pagan. He is solidly Roman Christian. He is going on pilgrimage to Rome, and he is donating a large amount of his money to Christ Church, and he's promoting Roman Christian ideas as much as possible.
If I could just add on to that, the 19th century and early 20th century is very important. Most people, their idea of Vikings, their idea of Brian Boru, their idea of medieval history is a very simplified version that was popularized for nationalistic reasons in the 19th and early 20th centuries, sort of, whereby the Vikings are bad pagans and burning churches, etc., whereas the English or the Scots or the Irish were Christians fighting against them. And it's a very simplified version of history. The Victorians rediscovered a lot of history, Irish history, English history, Scottish history, but they made a mess of it. They rediscovered it in badly. A lot of translations were produced, which then their translations get copied and bad ideas get passed around. And then these ideas stick in people's minds for a few generations, and then historians since the 1960s, 1970s have been saying, hold on, it's not like that. It wasn't like that. It's much more complicated. And when you're dealing with ingrained ideas, it can be very, very hard to do that. Someone made a comment about sacred trees, saying that every clan had a sacred tree. They didn't, but there were loads of sacred trees. Like in Tullahoga, the O'Neills, there was some grove there with sacred trees which got chopped down. But you look through the annals and you'll find zillions of references to different groups chopping down sacred trees. I think most sacred trees would have been planted for religious or political religious purposes. So it wouldn't have been that each clan had a sacred tree. There were trees that grew. Some people said they were sacred. They were in a place that was important for a while, but it would change quite a lot. So it's a romanticization. Again, it's a romanticization of a much more complex and dynamic reality.
Yeah, I mean, even the O'Briens get their tree cut down.
I was about to say that as well. Mail Shocknell going down and cutting down their tree, and they proper tick about it as well. Like,
I think it is. it's not just sacred trees. It's not just there's all kinds of monastic sites and holy wells, and a lot of different families would have put reverence on a lot of different items and locations for various reasons. You would have had what you call it? What you call the places where you're thrown as inauguration sites. You'd have had all these, which were, the O'Neills had one of theirs demolished by Mountjoy. So a lot of reverence is put on to different locations, different items. Certain families were given specific roles around protecting or creating these items, etc. But then we have, I think, a lot of this myth, though, of sacred trees, and every family has one. It harkens back to almost like the noble barbarian sort of ideology of like the noble savage. The Celts and the trees, and so every Irish family must have had this sacred tree, and the putting almost Iron Age ideologies onto sort of medieval ways of thinking, and it wasn't always like that, but certainly some families would have done, like we've stated that the O'Briens definitely did, but there's always an item or a flag, or not a metaphorical flag, a symbol that families or tuas or kings would utilize to galvanize support or their troops, or and some would be more important than others in different time periods. Cut that tree down to 400 years later and the O'Briens wouldn't have cared less. They were so ingrained in the English court. They had they were fully Protestant. They'd probably have cut it down for themselves for firewood anyway. So the time and the place is also important.
I love how somebody's asking. Sorry for butting in there, O'Neill. I just want to add this one in. I love how someone's got into Owen's chat there and asked him to go and free the north of Ireland. And I thought to myself, I seen that comment and I was like, I think Owen would go up there if he had the chance and subjugate it, get back his cattle rent after all these years. What, they owe you about 200 years, was it 2,000 years of cattle rent or something on, did it?
I've become very rich. I was just going to say, like Jim has pointed out, I heard of sacred tree groves, but not sacred trees on their own. Yeah, there were a lot of ones. Like Tullahogue had one. It got chopped down by someone, maybe the Argilla, I think, at some stage. And then it grows back. And Mountjoy, he smashes the chair on Tullahogue. He ignores the trees, etc. So Mountjoy gets and he sees this chair and he says, aha, I'm going to smash that and destroy the O'Neills. The smashing didn't have any particular importance because the chair was called Lac Nari, which means stone of the kings. So originally it was some sort of stone, and then eventually, probably much later than we think, one O'Neill lord decided to make a chair there. He got some other stones. And whereas Mountjoy couldn't care less about chopping down the trees, sort of. And then if you look at Baha Eru O'Donnell, the life of Hugh O'Donnell, there's one passage in that where there's an argument, I think it's over who's going to become the next Maguire. And Hugh O'Donnell gets a cup and he gives it to one of the guys and says, now you're Maguire. Now you're the Maguire Lord. So he inaugurates him using a cup. So there was a dynamism there.
Hang on, someone's let me just get the old TikTok check because I don't want to. Where'd they go?
They've been screaming at us for the last hour and a half. Where's my family name?
No.
Shut me on. Tell me your name. I'll just I'll just cover what you're checking.
No, I've got it.
I'll just cover this question.
I was just going to say, history has been simplified down. I can't copy across Gary, sorry, but why is that? I wonder. Is it to hide certain truths from us? I think you kind of touched on this earlier with the Whig history and so. History is often simplified for digestive reasons, I would say, more than propaganda reasons, in the sense of a lot of people find it hard to take in the complications of history and human nature to simplify and box everything up into easy to digest information. We can see that with the very creation of TikTok. But and yeah, I certainly there were and still are mass attempts of interpreting history to fit political narratives of the day. You know, I've often raised the point of an individual who would often write about the Kristna, a group in Ulster who shared a name with the Picts, and therefore the Picts have, you know, the Britons have always been in Ireland. Therefore, you know, and it's used to justify the plantation of Ulster, and rather than look at it as a colonialism or as an invasion of any kind, it's just a re-arriving of the original inhabitants. So we could see that it exists, but I would say for the most part, most academics, without their obviously still have their own internal biases, but for the most part, I would say today most try to stay honest as they can, and I'll just say like that because some maybe don't realize they're maybe off the beaten path. But yeah, I think that there's no great. What the point I'm trying to get is there's really not a great propaganda. There's not a great conspiracy. There's not these often when you see on a lot of media today about this great conspiracy of the learned or the academics or cover-ups and stuff like that. There's none of that. Is the point I'm trying to raise.
Yeah.
Academics
sure.
are too busy fighting each other to be able to conspire.
Yeah.
Well, the Irish are ones. It's other universities abroad are a bit funny, all right. But the thing is that you'll see stuff that happens overseas, and people then assume it's happening in Ireland, and it's not happening in Ireland, because I remember I was in university at the time, between 2015 up to 2018, and we had loads of wild stuff happening over in America. And people assumed that was happening in the likes of Trinity College, University College of Cork, and University College of Dublin. It wasn't. As Owen just pointed out there, sorry about that, is the fact that they were too busy trying to cut each other's heads off. I remember at the time, it was Jim O'Neill's book on the 9-Year War was coming out, and that was what the big drama was here in Ireland, was his book coming out, if you remember, Owen. Nobody had no clue what the hell the Americans were up to, and we didn't care. No offense to anyone in the chat, but we didn't care what you were up to. No offense, guys. We were too busy concentrated on Jim O'Neill's book coming out on the 9-Year War. That was the big focus at the time, and trying to either destroy that book or try to what was it called? Some people accepting that book as solid history. That's what everybody was talking about for the last for all those years that I was in university, you know. And I remember the peak of it was his book coming out and going up to what was it called, Tyrone, for the book signing and everything, and even people that he had met during the Time team and stuff going up to see that. That was what all the big drama and the fuss was at the time. You know, you get that every once in a while where somebody assumes that something's happening overseas. Even now, people are assuming that in Ireland we're going to get the word Gael and Gaelic and chuck it in the bin, because the English woke up one day this week and said, oh, we don't really like the terms Anglo-Saxon, Gaelic, and what was it, Pictish anymore. We think that's kind of racist. No way, Jose, is a single Irish academic going to be doing that. Especially the way we've been talking all week. That's not happening in Ireland. the academics don't have that kind of agendas that we're having, that they're having overseas and stuff. So just to highlight that for you guys, like,
I think that quote you were just showing is perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's something felt by a lot of academics. They're far too busy. I know Howard Williams as well, mutual man TikTok, he has sort of challenged this before and said about basically the same thing. Everyone's far too busy to get together and for some mass conspiracy. There's a comment here. Someone was asking, how far back did it go? Not that far back. Basically, someone would like to know what all of our images are.
That's in Dennis. That's Dennis.
Yeah, Dennis is one.
Hang on.
Tell us about the
which one?
Tell us about the background image you guys are using. I can guess Phillips.
Yeah. The old, for anyone who hasn't guessed it at this point, it's the old Rock of Cashel down in Munster. I'm down in Mallow. Well, my parents are down in Mallow. I'm lost out in the Pacific Sea right now, out in Asia. But back home now, that's the closest one I have. I have the Rock of Cashel just north of me, up in Tipperary, because I'm down. Well, my family's down in Mallow, like, so. I have this post up here. First occupied by the Oenachta. The Oenachta were the first ones to occupy the Rock of Cashel. And then the Dalcash go in and usurp them out of it, up around the 960s, 970s. The Dalcash and go in and usurp the Oenachta. The Oenachta branch out then and then to become the McCarthy's. And then after the Battle of Clontarf, the the O'Briens kind of branch out of the Dalcash. And the O'Briens and the McCarthy's end up fighting over the Rock of Cashel for a good bit until Murtough Ibrahim, who's a part of the Dalcash dynasty, just gives it over to the church, just purposely. They reckon, the McCarthy's reckon they did it out of spite, to spite the McCarthy's, give it over to the papacy.
Of course they did. It was
this?
Cutest political move in Irish history. I am going to smash the Oenachta by giving their home to the church, and like they won't be able to get it back, or they haven't. So that's a cute move. It's it's politics 101.
What about yours, Bono?
Okay, mine's a little bit older. Hold on. I've disappeared. It is Ictor which is a Bronze Age stone row in Kerry, in South Kerry. It's just after Waterville. It has a very interesting history. Like, they've actually excavated and found it was used over a very long time. But it is supposed to be, so it's Bronze Age, so it's pre-Gaelic, but it was incorporated into Gaelic mythology. It's supposed to be the grave of Skeina, who was the wife of a Mergan, leader of the Milesians, who they would have landed in Ballinaskelligs. And all around Ballinaskelligs Bay, the Gaelic Irish identified there's a lot of Bronze Age or Neolithic, megalithic monuments. And loads of Milesians, loads of the Sons of Mill died landing, and they've got identified different ones. This is the most magnificent one. It's an amazing stone row.
I had a gobshite yesterday telling me, he was annoying the crap out of me, telling me that the Gael weren't Irish. And I was like, where the hell are you getting this from? And he says, in the Book of Invasions, it says the Gael aren't Irish. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. I'm pretty sure the Book of Invasions was specifically written to justify that the Gael are Irish. And I had this lunatic yesterday trying to convince me that the Book of Invasions was a book written to try to tell me that the Gael weren't Irish. It's the amount of lunatics. I decided to bring that up since we're on the old thing of the nations and stuff.
I had similar dealings recently. Someone trying to differentiate between Gaels and Old Irish.
Yeah.
and saying this is proven by DNA, and he sent
Oh,
me
Jesus Christ.
some of is it Tyrone Bow's Irish origins?
Oh yes.
Some of
Go
his
on.
videos to justify this, and I said, hold on, like
Mm.
you can get different DNA markers all over Ireland. That doesn't mean there's different cultures.
Mm.
And then he just said, I won't
Yeah.
listen to him and gave up.
I thought I'm like I said, I've been working on a video basically challenging this with the Cruithne, because they use it's the same argument again there that I point out that the Cruithne are Britons, are genetically related to the Brittonic groups, supposedly. So therefore, them being in Ulster, it makes them the true rightful people. And there's other groups like the Soigan. That's not how you pronounce it, but that's how it reads, etc. Other groups, the Brigantes are meant to be in Ireland as well, and the fact that all these sort of there's earlier maps as well from Massey. What to call your anyway, that say the British Isles and stuff like this, and trying to explain it to people that how language moves, how terms are interpreted, how is again it just goes back to the point of like this is why history gets simplified, and this is the problems that happen when we have simplified history rather than going into the weeds. I will just quickly put my 2 pence piece in. Oh, you can't even see it. I'm going to stay small because to get the whole thing. That's St. Comyn's Church in Roscommon. And it is the McCormicks or O'Cormacans. They were earners of this church. Why did I pick it? Because that's literally the only history I know of the church. Because when picking a background, this was the only one that worked.
We were having technical problems before the channel turned on. As we were trying to learn it, because originally, what was it called? I was the one running the restream and stuff, and I wasn't making the bloody money back, so I couldn't, because I am planning on to going to Taiwan next month, so I want to keep up most of my money for Taiwan and stuff. So poor Mihal had to purchase the restream this week. And Mihal's there trying to work out how the whole thing works and stuff this morning. So we were trying to crash course it this morning and try to get it up and running. And while he was trying to do it, he was trying to get a picture that bloody worked, because obviously the whole thing now is reset again. So we have to get new photos and everything up and running. And so we were having all kinds of technical problems and bloody all kinds of stuff going on at the same time as well.
But so, I mean, it was lucky. It's still, they are the O'Cormacans, the McCormicks, Clanlands, earners. It tied in okay. To what the channel sort of generally covers. Sorry for asking that, Michael. Yeah, I mean, to be fair. I was kind of hoping. I didn't think anyone would ask. I didn't think anyone would bother. But yeah, throw me on the road. Yeah, throw me under the bus.
No, I was hoping. I was there trying to manifest that somebody would ask about the Rock of Cashel, because I love talking about the Rock of Cashel. Rock of Cashel is a good one. I used to be a tour guide for the Rock of Cashel for a very short time with the tour buses. You know how they'd pick them up from Cove? I was doing the tours for that for a wee bit. So I was even doing tours of Rock of Cashel and everything. Absolutely love the Rock of Cashel. So I'll take the blunt of that, because it was my mind. Dennis just picked up my manifesting mind.
All the Rock of Cashel is cool, but Cormac's Chapel is something amazing. And they've done a lot of work on it. And I think if you ever go to Rock of Cashel, you have to pay a bit extra to go into Cormac's Chapel. But because just being in there and like they've preserved a tiny bit of what it was like, and you go in there and you can say, forget all this rubbish about the Irish, the Gaelic Irish being barbarians and not building anything, etc. Like you walk in there and say, okay, these people, this culture was as modern as anything of its time.
Yeah.
sort of.
And that was what's really exciting about Cormac's Chapel is that was constructed around the 11th century. That's just at the end of the Viking Age, around 1014, when we're starting to get the old reform of the church coming in and stuff. And the McCarthy's, unless you guys correct me now, the McCarthy's had brought in German architects. So the number one thing that a lot of what was it called, architects and also archaeologists get really, really excited about is actually the arches that's going in, the way the doors and stuff is built and the way the roof is built and stuff, because a lot of that was very modern, what was it called, modern revolutions at the time in building and stuff, because before then, when they're building a lot of that stuff, it was collapsing. And so the McCarthy's bring a lot of people in from Germany to construct Cormac's Chapel. So it really does highlight our connections between Ireland and Germany at the time. And also this whole idea that which is something that Maynooth University is arguing this year, is the fact that the idea that the land of the saints and scholars, it doesn't just suddenly click and it's over in 793. That the saints and scholars are still going out into Europe after 793 to places like Austria, like Switzerland, over to the north of Italy, over to Milan. They're still going over to Paris. They're still going into like Charlemagne's court and stuff, even after 793 and the Viking Age. Even after the Viking Age comes to an end with the reform of the church and stuff, that it's not until the Normans come in around 1169 that you start to see a dip with the end of this proper kind of idea of monks and members of the Irish clergy going out into the wider European world. That it's not just suddenly the lights go out and all the Irish clergy just disappear into the night, the way that English propaganda, like Gerald of Wales, would have you believe.
I will just want to touch, because we were sort of saying about guilds and groups there. That I thought it was interesting that said my DNA started around Syria, and there might be a Bible links to Ireland. I mean, to be fair, claims about like descent from Noah, migrations from Spain, the Milesians, battles against the Tuatha De Danann, they primarily come from the Labola Gavala Aaron, which is like a Christian pseudo history. It's written to align the origins with the Bible. The tribes of Israel and these migrations it's pseudo history. It's not attested with linguistics or archaeological evidence. Just to back any of this up. So, people have to remember, and it's the same with. So you have origin stories like Niall Nogalach, the three colours. These aren't literal family trees. They're basically stories to connect people, and then used as propaganda by later groups to show connection. Not just propaganda. Propaganda's maybe sometimes they're used for a multitude of reasons to connect families together. It doesn't have to be pure propaganda. They can just be a genuine attempt to link two allies together in blood. A general show of loyalty to an overlord, to say, you're descended from Niall of the Nine Hostages, so am I. And it's a bold statement or claim, fashioned from a multitude of multi-layered political, reasoning, but they are, so you have to be very careful when you speak about it. There's even talk today with genetics and everything that even the O'Neills do not descend from Niall Nogalach, and they are an illegitimate line. DNA testing is now starting to question this in certain pockets. And I always want to say, well, I was a McLaughlin supporter anyway. So, so I'm quite happy for them not to be a legitimate line. But it actually, because obviously surnames were polygenetic, they weren't adopted by everyone who was a descendant anyway. But you have to understand, like I say, these are not literal, to be taken as literal fact, and have to be put in the correct time and place. And sometimes we don't know that time and place, or understand the reasoning in that time and place, because we don't have the evidence to back up our claims. But yeah, just it's very I would try to avoid links like to the Bible. With Irish history.
Next, you're going to be telling me that the prophet Jeremiah didn't come to Ireland, and somehow or other his tombstone is not in Loughcrew, which was on this beautiful carved stone, carved about 2,000 years before the prophet Jeremiah existed, and which people, every time I've been doing stuff about Neolithic and stuff like that, and the amount of people who bring that up. I'm actually going to make a video in the near future about this, because again, blamed Victorians. You had the emergence of British Israelites and other beliefs then, in which they just couldn't. They get an amazing history and amazing stuff, and somehow they insist on tying it in Bible, which it doesn't fit. There's a 2,000. The Irish Neolithic is much older than the Israel history, and they've nothing to do with it. But they insist on, like, they can be very strong in their insistence. I'm going to make a video about it just to.
I will. So yeah. So again, I think that there's some why DNA corroborate in the colours, but I believe there's DNA evidence that Niall Nogaluk or an individual who's most likely now existed in that time. What I'm saying is not that these individuals did not exist, and it's the same with my claim against the Bible or any of the individuals in those, did not exist. I'm not claiming these. What I'm claiming is what happened afterwards. So the likes of Niall Nogaluk's family tree, where you see that he has so many brothers, like Breen, who was the ancestor of the Breen, and therefore the ancestor of the O'Connors, and his so many sons. We actually have physical evidence. We can actually see, if you trace it, we can actually see when the trees are being edited in medieval history, where Niall's getting additional sons added to his family tree centuries later, and then lo and behold, this family is descended from a son of Niall, of this new edited tree. We can physically track so many editings of these manuscripts by Irish families. The Breen Brefna, are a perfect example. They claim to be part of the wider Breen, descended from Breen, who's the brother of Niall Nogaluk. We know that's not true. We knew before DNA testing that wasn't true. We knew this was an edited manuscript, pure propaganda to legitimize the O'Reillys and the O'Rourke's rule of Brefna. And they did such a good job that we don't even know who they're really descended from. We don't know the wider kin group that these groups descend from, because they did such a good job of editing their family trees and editing their manuscripts. But they didn't do that good a job, because we know they did it. They didn't use the right colored Tipex, and we can see that they did it. So yeah, I'm not saying these individuals did not exist. I'm not saying that they didn't, family royal lines didn't come from these lines. What I'm saying is that it's not as clear cut and a lot of these families aren't who they say they are, and maybe a lot of them maybe didn't even know they weren't who they said they were. And the McSweeney's are a great example. They claim descent from Amrahan, who is a brother of the O'Donnells or main line. And when the McSweeney's get kicked out of Scotland and come across, they claim this descent from Amrahan. Did the O'Donnells know that the McSweeney's weren't really part of the Cornwall? Probably, maybe. Did they see an advantage to them, claiming it? Well, yeah, they just got themselves 1,000 armored warriors from the Highlands. Yeah, sure, we can be brothers. Or maybe they are, but I'm just saying it's not as clear cut.
What I find absolutely hilarious about this is, while all these families are making all these claims connecting themselves to the likes of the Enale and O'Brien and so on and so forth, is that you got the Fitzgeralds then over around the Kerry region, the Desmond Fitzgeralds, who are reckoning that they're actually the whole entire time that they're actually a member of the Florentine family, the Geraldinis and stuff. So you got everyone else, arguing about this stuff in Ireland and stuff, and the Fitzgeralds are thinking about the bigger picture. We're not Normans, we're actually Italians this whole time. We're Florentines. I can imagine. What was it around? I think it's around the 1420s. And then rocking into the Irish Parliament and telling the likes of the White Earl Butler, Seamus the White Earl Butler, that in fact we're actually Italians. We're not Normans. We're not English at all. We're actually Italians and stuff. So I just find that quite funny. Like if you're going to be making up your own dynasty and stuff, why not just go absolutely wild? Why not just add yourself into Genghis Khan and stuff altogether? I'm descended from Genghis Khan. Forget about the rest of you guys.
Someone saying the O'Neills are the O'Neills are actually descended from back to the Sasquatch and aliens from another galaxy. I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't even say that's the strangest claim by some families. Most of those would be modern claims, but I just think people get this weird idea of almost like genetic purity or something, that we all must, and I think it's such a weird concept, 1,000, whether your family's been on this island for 400 years or for 5,000 years. And even then, how do you differentiate? Because we're all into marrying, we're all, it's just such a weird idea. At the end of the day, someone was saying before, they're a mutt, and we're all mutts, just because it's not, and we have been since the beginning of time.
I heard when the last Queen of England died, Elizabeth, some people were saying, "Oh, she was a descendant of Brian Boru," and then I read, I'm not sure if it's a historian or the genealogy said, look. So he died, say, 1,000 years ago. You have, it's X number of generations. So probably there's at least 1 million descendants of Brian Boru. And you could say the same for Charlemagne. You could say the same for probably Julius Caesar. No, I'm not sure if I'm going to get kids. But, take any historical character and you will. Facebook, for example, keeps showing me these sites of people who are all claiming they're descendants of Henry, whatever, King of England, somebody King of Bohemia, etc. I was, where'd you get this information from? I know DNA has some interesting things, but I think people are misunderstanding it. 200% Irish. History unfolds. History is more than DNA. I know some of these people are insisting that XYZ means we're all descendants of somebody. Yes, but it's quite problematic to do a sort of a DNA search starting in 21st century Ireland. Because so many things, the Gaelic order was destroyed in 1603, 1607. So many things have happened since then. And I noticed that one thing I find puzzling in many of this historic DNA stuff, they take tests nowadays, but from people whose grandparents are living within 50 kilometers of where they live, something like that. So therefore they eliminate a huge amount of the population because more than a third of the population of Ireland is in Dublin. Everybody from Dublin go back 2 generations, they're from the country. So I have DNA is presenting some very interesting stuff, but it can't deal with culture and it can't deal with history, with what actually happened. It proves that someone 1,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago had children, and his or her DNA has been passed down. If you look at ancient DNA, people abuse that. Oh, like the thing about Ireland and the Basque, which has been disproved. Um,
mm,
Basically, people starting in the
mm.
where Ukraine is, the steppes, they moved gradually to
Yeah.
Ireland. Or not the Scythians. They moved gradually to Ireland, and but they took 1,000 years or more. So, like,
Mm,
history is much more complex than numbers.
yeah. Yeah, it is a funny one, all right, and it doesn't bloody help as well when you got genealogy. Sorry, people who specialize in DNA research, making up their own history as well. I don't know if you've seen all those articles and stuff when they found a link between the Beaker people and Ireland around 2,800 BC, and straight away people who were specializing in DNA started calling it Celtic DNA, and I was like, "Oh Jesus!"
Yeah,
Of all the terms you could have turned around and said for a statement, especially when you don't qualify in making those kind of statements, to suddenly turn around and says, "Oh, we're going to call this the Celtic DNA." And then even yesterday, when I was trying to explain that, you have the Gaels, the Gaelic people, but then you have the whole Celtic culture, and I made a short trying to dumb it down as much as possible and basically say that Celtic is the culture, Gael is the, genetic makeup that the people, that's what we are. We identify ourselves as the Gael, the Gaelic people. And then people just straight away chucking in all this DNA research and stuff. And you're looking at this stuff and it's like, that's the Bell Beaker people. That is not the Celtic people that you're referring to. When I'm talking about the Celtic people and stuff, I'm talking about the likes of Hallstatt culture. I'm talking about Latin culture. I'm not talking about the Bell Beaker. You see, there you go. Rufal knows exactly what I'm talking about. The R1B. That's the Bell Beaker people and the Indo-European culture. That is not Celtic culture. It was a bunch of, I remember that article coming out, and that was written by people that specialize in DNA. They don't specialize in history. And that's why they started trucking in random terms all over the place. And I remember reading the
yeah,
article, just grinding my bloody teeth about it. Like,
yeah. Sorry, I just going to join in here. Tommy Tommy E. Core says
mm,
that he thinks I misunderstand the difference between a direct ancestor and having a common ancestor. I don't.
mm,
I think DNA has a lot of stuff and is
yeah,
used very good in pointing back to common ancestors. The problem is when people start joining dots that aren't there.
yeah,
Um, and like one is about 5 or 6 years ago, there was another article came out which said, "Oh, the kings of Newgrange, and these people having a certain god kings who were brother and sister marrying each other,"
mm,
and then that got big, big, big headlines. But then a year or two later, a whole pile of archaeologists got together and said, "Sorry, that's wrong, very wrong."
mm,
And they published an article and in which they had the DNA, all the DNA samples that they've obtained from the Neolithic tombs.
yeah,
And it was basically one or two DNA samples pointed to this idea of God kings. And they said, no, actually, it looks like they weren't even kings. It looked like, there's a huge range of people buried in these things.
mm,
They don't know why, but the same, like DNA samples came up with completely different ideas, completely, and one was very, very wrong. And it was the
mm,
historians, the archaeologists came along and looked at it and said, hold on, these guys are wrong. So DNA is useful. It's very useful. We're now getting a better idea about the peopling of Ireland. But
mm,
when it comes to something more micro, you can work backwards and work out, yeah, these people, I have a common ancestor somewhere. But
mm,
my problem is when you say that the O'Neills have this, the O'Neills are these people, the
yeah,
O'Donnells are these people, the crew of
mm,
team are these people, etc., etc. Uh, DNA can't do that. It can
yeah.
show you who your common ancestors were, but it doesn't show you history.
Mm. Yeah, it's quite funny as well. That whole Indo-European thing as well is quite funny. Because even for the past about 5 years now, you got people pointing out the connections between the Irish language and certain words popping up again over in India as well, and also the similarities of cattle culture between India and Ireland as well. So that's a quite interesting one. I don't specialize in what was it called, the Bronze Age world and stuff around 2800, and I don't really specialize in Indo-European culture, and I'm also not a linguistic as well, so I couldn't really go into the deep details about a lot of that stuff. I mostly specialize around the medieval era and stuff. So when people bring up that Indo-European culture and
I
stuff, I think it's very important. And the problem I'm having is people are mixing up what you're referring to as Celtic culture around the Hallstatt Latin period, and they're also mixing up the Bell Beaker people. The Bell Beaker people, from an academic perspective and a linguistic perspective, are an Indo-European people. They're not a Celtic people. It was people who specialized in DNA that were branding the Indo-European Bell Beaker people as Celtic, when they're, you're complicated an already very, very complicated story. Like,
So
sorry,
just,
there on.
just reply to Tommy Core again. Yeah, no, that's fine. Maybe I just discussed it wrong. I was more ranting a bit about certain sites that I read and see, or YouTube stuff where they get this stuff. Someone is mentioning about saying, I've lost the quote, that 90% of modern DNA is from the Neolithic farmers. Is actually not. From my understanding, there are three waves of DNA in Ireland. The first wave is the hunter-gatherers. Then then in come the Neolithic farmers, who basically Newgrange, etc. And then in the Bronze Age, new DNA comes in, which started in the steppes, and that DNA is still with us. And despite, for example, the Norse coming in, despite the Normans, the Anglo-Normans, despite the Tudors, etc., Irish DNA has basically been largely stable since the Bronze Age, which points to something. There were big entrances of new populations. I don't know how many Norse would have come in, but a large amount of Scottish, a large amount of English, and smaller amounts of people from Flanders, etc., came into Ireland, but they didn't fundamentally change Irish DNA as much as it got changed between the Bronze Age and the Neolithic.
Yeah. The problem as well, and Micheál is somebody that definitely went into details about this when he did his video on Are You a Viking and whatnot, is that you do have a large amount of Irish that suddenly claim that they're Viking during the Viking Age, between 793 up to around 1014 and stuff. They suddenly get sick of doing a bit of farming and decide, I'm going to immigrate into one of these towns that are being built around Dublin, Limerick, Cork, and Galway. Going to reinvent myself as a Scandinavian, and I'm going to go a pirate.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just touch on that. Doyle, my own name, is a almost perfect example of this. In that it means dark foreigner in its literal translation. We don't exist in any of the great genealogies. Although there is Donegal, Dougal would be the modern sort of translation of it, exists as a personal name. The Doyle name doesn't appear in, in these great genealogies of the O'Kellys, the O'Briens, O'Neills. But what seems to be happening, the fantastic historian Claire Downham did some work on it, and it seems to be a name given to now a lot of names that the Irish are given. Even the name Gael is a name attributed to us by the Britons, and then adopted. A lot of that's what happens with a lot of self-identifying names. Is like they are often given to you first by others, and then taken on by the group later on. And Doyle is no different. It seems to be that Irish people are moving into these hubs, these trading hubs, these long forts, the Dublin, Longford, all these sort of, and then they are being given the name Donegal by the remaining native Irish of of the Outlands, and then they're adopting this name Doyle as almost like a proud, I am a dark stranger, I am a dark foreigner, so what, I'm becoming Doyle, which is why there's so many of Doyle's the 8th most common name in Ireland, the common surname in Ireland, and it's purely because, like you say, people are just getting up, moving, being attributed these tags, these name tags, and then adopting them, whether they are attached to another group or another people's, it doesn't matter at the time to them, because at the time to them at that specific moment, they needed to move to the town for marriage, work, whatever. So it's a very, it's the same with the surname Walsh. That's the Branners, they're Welshmen moving into.
Oh, he's gone. Michael's gone. He ran away. Go on, he's back again.
I don't know what happened. I had a connection drop. Often these are descriptive terms given to people, and like so many of our terms are just terms given by other people to these people. They may not even be how they identify themselves, and then we try to almost backtrack and look back and implant our own ideology, our own thinking onto these individuals, interpreting, our own biases onto these people, sort of going, well, must be how they identified. Whereas the Welshman who came across to Ireland and became Walsh may never have identified as a Welshman. It was just a term given to him. So we just have to be very careful when we look back on that.
I see Owen's channel is exploding there. Make sure to lads, if you don't mind giving us a like and share. It means a ton to us right now. Absolutely amazing stuff. Also, something I want to add on to the conversation there, Michal, that word foreigner is so funny. We were talking about nationalism early on. And the problem is, I find a lot of academics around the 1950s, the 1960s and stuff, we're looking at that word foreigner and then just assuming, hey, look, that must be a Norwegian. And it's such a funny thing to do, is just to suddenly start going, every single time we see the word foreigner, we're just going to assume that they're a Norwegian or a Dane. When it could be just a case of, these days we have the term blow in. So one is a blow-in. A blow-in is basically a person that could literally just suddenly rock up in a village, and they could be another Irish person. So if you just blew into a village, you're referred to as a blow-in. You're an outsider. And I do wonder, looking into medieval Ireland, when they're using the term foreigner, that when you go into a different assembly, a different Tuat area, that you are an outsider. And as a part of being an outsider in a era that doesn't recognize the term nationalism, that they're basically even referring to other Irish people as kind of blow-ins, foreigners in those areas. And I do wonder, at the start of the Viking Age, around 820, around 840, that even the term foreign Irish, Gael, Gael, is not Norwegian, that it is just Irish people who've left their own Tuat and have basically gone foreign, gone Gael, Gael, foreign Irish, And I even find it interesting that your term, Doyle, translated over, is black foreign. And people are assuming that, oh, well, it must be Norwegian, when in fact it could be just a foreigner to the Tuat.
Yeah. Just to change slightly, Brian M. USD or something, he's saying something which I want to disagree with. I'm being contrarian today. Says Scots Gaelic shares a plethora of religious, spiritual terms in common with Sanskrit, as it is more archaic and closer to the Old and Middle Irish and our oldest texts, and the midst of the connection. Scots Gaelic is not more archaic than it's the same. Like Scots Gaelic basically starts appearing at the end of the 16th century because it gets written down there first. But It is a split off from Irish.
Yeah.
And the problem when you're talking about texts is with the destruction of Gaelic Ireland, and especially the destruction of the intellectual part of Gaelic Ireland, we have lost the cultural dimension, the cultural context in which these texts were built. If you go and look at Bardic poetry, even if you have good Old Irish or Middle Irish, it's bloody difficult because the poets are using lots of metaphors, like instead of saying Dublin, Clear, they might say the land of two hills beside a river or something like that. They use very eloquent ways. We've lost this. So you can't say that Scots Gaelic or our Irish is closer to Sanskrit. Sanskrit comes from Indo-European. If you dive into it, yes, there are certain root words that can be shared, but no, you can't use Old Irish text to identify knowledge that from Sanskrit. Scots Gaelic and Irish, they're essentially the same, and then they split away. Neither is more archaic or closer to Old Irish than the other.
Yeah, I believe the split happened in the 14th century. That's when Scots Gaelic became its own language.
Yeah, but just at the same time, Irish now has a number of, even in its very weak form, it has a number of distinct dialects. Scots Gaelic would have been a dialect, but you had until 1607 and possibly later in Scotland, you had an intellectual Irish. The same as if you go to Germany now, you have High German, Low German, you had Pomeranian, you have lots of different types of German, but there is an intellectual German. And it's the same if you go to Brazil, there's many different Portuguese dialects there, but you have the educated one. In England, you had the received pronunciation of the BBC, which was, how you were supposed to speak.
Oh so, yeah, you touch on it. So obviously you learn French at school, and I went to an English boarding school, and we had two French lads in there, and they were laughing when we would try and tell them that the French we'd learned in class, because they were saying it's not how you speak in France. It's a very formal kind of way of speaking that nobody would ever speak like that. Like you say, BBC English. We were basically taught BBC French, and that nobody would speak like that. And immediately, if you started speaking to them, doesn't matter how well you picked up in class or anything, they would immediately know you were not from France, because you're speaking basically foreign in a foreign way to them. You sound weird. So yeah, I get that, and I can imagine many people who are learning English probably have the same problem. And then you imagine you learn English, and then you end up getting off your boat and landing in Newcastle or Liverpool. Yeah, so I totally understand that. I did what someone had said very similar, but we're kind of on that about the Normans. They were so removed from their Scandinavian heritage by the time they came across to England. And I have a problem, a lot of, if you look at a lot of these Norman families, and we try to put them in the Scandinavian bracket as Norsemen, when they were given lands in Normandy, there were already nobles in Normandy. There were already masses of amounts of people in Normandy.
Yeah.
So not every Norman family that came across with William the Conqueror was of this genetic paternal line descended from a Norseman. Some of them and you can see this when you look at their lands that they're holding, when they're and their cousins and stuff like this. They're holding them in Aquitaine. They're holding them in they're holding lands all over France. So I often have a problem when people try to attribute the Normans coming across with 1066 Scandinavians for a multitude of reasons, but one of them is that not all of them are of paternal descent from the Norse settlers that were given.
I fully agree. It is funny because just before that, around the 11th century, so around the 10th century, if you ask most Normans, are you a Viking? They would have, even if they probably weren't a Viking, they would turn around and say, yeah, I'm a Viking. I have Scandinavian relations and stuff. Even if they weren't a Viking or had any Viking DNA, the reason for that is because Normandy made a lot of money out of importing wine. They were making tons of money of importing wine out to places like Denmark, Norway, into the Viking world and stuff. So Normandy at the time was very much connected with the Scandinavian world during the 10th century. And it's not until you go into the 11th century that they try to connect themselves more with the old French world, the Frankish world around them. The reason why there's a sudden change, especially in the later 11th century, is because of the Crusades and stuff. So yeah, 100%. And by then, they had been digested into the old French world, into the Frankish world at that point. So definitely into the 11th century, just before they invade into England and stuff, they would have seen themselves as more civilized Frankish people, more connected to the Charlemagne court and stuff. So just bear that in mind that during the Viking Age, they were very much like, even if they probably weren't even related to Viking families and stuff, would have turned around and says, yeah, I'm a Viking, because of the amount of money they were making within the Viking world. And then after the Viking Age kind of dims down, and you've got the likes of the Crusades, and you've got the reform of the church and stuff, they want to see themselves as more civilized. So it's at that point they see themselves as more Frankish, proud Frankish Norman knights.
Viking is the same as Celtic. I would actually say, well, I know what you're trying to say here, and I would agree. But I would say Viking, we've applied Celtic to be more of a cultural grouping rather, and we can see the like the Latin cultures and stuff like this, and the sort of interconnect between that. Viking, I think, is a little bit even more problematic than the term Celtic or any other sort of term that we use, purely because of what it was to be a Viking or to go Viking. And even then, that's got its own problems in academic circles. There's still this sort of, what it was to be or go Viking. There's still an ongoing sort of discussion on how to project this word and use this word, just because of how people are interpreting it. I understand the logic of using the term Celtic. I see the problems with it, but the term Viking, I feel, is a lot more loaded.
Yeah, well, both of them are very, very loaded.
Yes.
The problem with both of them is they're both modern terms. Sorry about that, Owen. Do you need to say something?
I just wanted to, I agree with you. Sort of, they're both modern terms, and they mean different things at different times, which messes up history. So nowadays, Celtic often means non-English. So Celtic music, Celtic fringe, it's non-English. Insular Celt, okay. But I just wanted to jump back to Scots Gaelic. Brian replied to what I said. The teaching of modern Gaelic is locked to the text. My understanding is or continued more in the daily in Ireland, letting it become more modern. No, both are modern languages. Both lost their intellectuals. The intellectual part of Gaelic, whether in Scotland or Ireland, gets destroyed. Like it lasted a little longer in Scotland, but not much. Scots Gaelic was a language of, what you could say, poor people for a long time, but it's also a modern language. People spoke it on a daily basis. the Bardic schools and stuff like that disappear at the end of the 17th century in Scotland and in Ireland. So you can't say one is preserves better than the other. They're both living languages. They both change a lot. Irish has done a better job than Scots Gaelic, as far as I know, in doing a history of the language. I did honors Irish in school, so we had to study the Histoire Literature, the history of the literature. And post 1607, there is a big change in Irish literature. You have a whole pile of religious stuff coming out because some of the only educated people who are writing are now priests. The Bardic poems disappear because people are not trained in how to write them because there is a lot of stuff. So they're living languages. And they're both following different paths. Probably Irish follows a stronger path. Scots Gaelic has an advantage in that Protestant Church, the Church of Scotland, uses Scots Gaelic much before Irish, because the Catholic Church only produces a vernacular mass in the 1960s after Vatican II, whereas the Bible, the Protestants, the whole Bible, etc. But like it's there's no deeper connection in Scots Gaelic to Sanskrit, not at all.
I kind of disagree with the what Big Davis there saying Celtic is an alien language. Changed my mind. If you're using the umbrella term Celtic languages and stuff, yeah, I disagree with you that one. Especially the way Gaeilge has been spoken recently. Especially in the last 5 years now, there's been a massive Gaelic language revival. Well, at least a Gaeilge revival inside of Ireland happening up in Ulster. Especially when you have a lot of those bands popping up, such as the what was it called, Kneecap and stuff. I think Gaeilge, especially with young people these days, is really starting to pick up. And the amount of TikTok videos and everything, and a lot of people these days having conversations in Gaeilge, absolutely great to see. Even Americans, as Irish Americans now starting to go off in their own time, picking up Gaeilge, trying to learn Gaeilge and stuff. Something I really do encourage. Now, granted, not really the greatest at Gaeilge. I did go to a Gaeilge school when I was about 7 or so, and then went off to a Catholic school afterwards. So my Gaeilge wouldn't be the greatest, to be quite honest with you. But I really do support this whole Gaeilge movement happening inside of Ireland. So I kind of disagree in Gaeilge being an alien language for the time being. Let's see what else we have here.
Well,
rating was
I was
there.
just going to say, and that kind of perks up on I don't know who this David Starkey is. About
he's a well-known English historian, sort of. I think he's Cambridge or Oxford, sort of. He's. I probably shouldn't say too much. I don't want to get in trouble. But,
okay. Well,
he wrote a few books, made a name for himself, and then kind of becomes a public intellectual or something.
Oh, okay.
Sort of,
I probably read some of his work then, but yeah, his opinion on Cumraig, I again just echoes what Philip says. I will say, obviously, I'm from Northern Ireland, so we have this continuous debate about the Irish language in Ulster and its position in Northern Ireland at the minute. And Wales or Cumraig is a perfect example of a language that was effectively dying, pretty much dead. And this was used to beat down the argument of its revival in the 90s. And then look at it now, it's thriving, and yes, it's not spoken so much in southern Wales, it's more of a northern Wales. The less populated part of Wales is the north, and it's the most spoken in Wales, the north. But there's a lot of geopolitical reasons for that, as in like second homes and stuff like this, and English settlers and stuff, and all these sort of things that sort of put into play. My personal opinion is that if anyone feels like something is worth doing, it's not wasted, and it doesn't matter if it's a language, it doesn't matter if it's a hobby, and I don't think this. So my argument when teaching my own children Irish is my wife is English, so she wasn't that keen on the idea. She'd never spoken Irish, never was that. Even if they learn Irish and never used it again, the tools they would learn from learning Irish would benefit them when learning another language later in life, because it doesn't follow the same grammatical structure as English. Therefore, they are opening their minds up for possible influences from other languages later. So I says even just teaching them that tool, teaching them Irish for as a tool for something other later on, rather than keeping Irish, still has its benefits. But I would just say that anyone that sort of has a problem with learning a specific language is probably too much time on their hands.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He makes a point, as he says, that Ulster has the biggest Gaeltacht. I'm not going to argue with that, but I remember 20, 30 years ago, an Irish-speaking friend of mine said to me that there's more Irish speakers in Dublin than in the Gaeltachts. And I think that's even more true now. Where I live would have been a Gaeltacht in 1962 or 3. My mother's from Glenbeigh, which is near Kilmalton. That was, when she was in school in the 1940s, that was a Gaeltacht. Looking at the census from 1901, 1911, my great-grandparents and my grandparents were Irish-speaking in Kilordran. The Irish language then, it unrolled dramatically, but I deal with Irish speakers. I do a lot of community work related to history, Heritage Eve and other things, Dark Sky Festival, and I go to meetings where quite often there's people speaking in Irish. I've given a tour to an Irish language primary school, which I found great, because I relearned lots of Irish in it. I think the Irish language is in a better position now than it has been in many years. In part because of the internet, part because among a certain age group it's become trendy, a lot because the government is looking for new ways of re-energizing Irish, and it's working to an extent. It still has a long way to go, but Irish is not a dying language at all.
No, I mean, they've even managed to revive the Manx language as well, so, and that was dead, officially.
Yeah, there is a problem with Gaeltachts, with preserving this area as an Irish-speaking thing, but there's so much Irish being spoken around the place. And most have Irish. All the names are translations of Irish, like place names.
Yeah, well, that was the argument. Yeah. That was the argument about street signs that are happening up here with.
I didn't want to get into that.
Well, I mean, it's 15% of an area vote and get, and I'm not arguing whether that's diplomatic or not. But the argument was, to say, we'll see Gaelic signs, Irish on the signs, and they're like, you're already speaking it by saying the word Belfast. You're already speaking Irish by saying Bally, wherever. Tyrone. You're already speaking it. So, and that's not even politics. That's just pointing out something that's happening. So, thanks very much for the golden boxing gloves on TikTok and the heart roses.
Is it Golden Boxing Gloves? Do they have it on YouTube now? Oh, TikTok. Yeah. I apologize to people we keep forgetting over in TikTok exist. Do you have many people over in TikTok
There
right
was
now, Michal?
six of them over here on TikTok, but
Oh yeah.
they've been loyal, patient. Someone's asked a couple of them asked questions. Unfortunately, they're a bit too in depth to go into now with this towards the end of the live.
Here, I'm popping there, so you can take your time there and go into detail. My channel just popped. I have a quick look around. I was watching Owen's thing. Definitely give Owen a like, whoever is over on Owen's channel. I've seen Owen's channel pop a few times, and I think your poor channel hasn't popped once. I don't think, Michal. I think you've gotten the blood.
Well, I don't mind. It's my own fault. I don't look after my channel as well as I should. As Kat will attribute, Kat has been on my case, which is why I've been releasing a lot more shorts recently. A unionist from the Shankill Road was complaining about Irish language road signs too, and it means old church. Look, I don't even think it's even relevant to put a unionist because I follow a young man, I can't remember, Robert Wallace, I believe it is, on TikTok. He is from a unionist background in County Down, and his TikTok is all about promoting the Irish language. Also, there is a councillor, not a councillor's sister.
Linda Erskine.
Yes.
Linda Erskine.
I believe she's from the Shankill, and has spent many years, decades even, promoting and teaching the Irish language. I don't think anyone it's never been about, it should never have been, I know it gets used sometimes by both sides of the argument, but it should never be about people's backgrounds that deny or are used to stop people from learning the Irish language. The Irish language was spoken by planter settlers when they first came across. There are many people that were bilingual would use the odd word in their language right up until, Robert Wallace states, I believe it was his grandfather. So you can sort of see, you're probably looking into the 1920s, 1930s, 40s. And there are many more people who can sort of attribute to their ancestors speaking Irish from all backgrounds. So any person who has a problem against it based on their political leanings or something like this, that's a modern thing. It was never a thing in the past. Although, I mean, obviously the stamping down on Irish has a long history. Well, as the statues of Kilkenny might say.
But Douglas Hyde, founder of the Gaelic League, he was Protestant, and I'm fairly sure his father was a Protestant priest, pastor, or something like that.
Yeah, the Presbyterians have a long history of promoting Irish in Ireland too. They wrote their Bible and distributed it around Galway, I think is the most famous part I read about them. But the Presbyterians have, but then again, the Presbyterians have always been a bit rebellious. But yeah, it's just the way. Which is kind of ironic up here today now. But so like I say, all these sticks that are being used by all sides of communities and political backgrounds stuff to beat one another, they're all nonsense. They're just I wouldn't put any heat into them. Like, and just if you don't want to learn Irish, don't learn it. But it's the indigenous language, and so what if it ends up on a signpost? It really isn't going to break anyone's day. Like, it shouldn't. It's almost like, to me, it feels like, someone turned around and someone said they love the castles in North Wales. And it'd be like, almost like, we must dismantle the castles in North Wales because they're a sign of colonialism. It's just like, why nobody talks like that. So why are we talking about it like this? But that's just my 50 pence piece before I get us all cancelled.
Well, no harm there. We'll start finishing up, so shall we? What was it called? Tomorrow night, unless you guys want to do anything else you guys want to cover before I start finishing up.
No, I'm fine.
No, happy days. All right, lads. Thanks very much for everybody in the chat. Thank you so much. Just one last word there for poor Wayne. Our thoughts and prayers are definitely with him and his family this week. We said our few moments at the start of the live stream and stuff, but yeah, just to bear that in mind again. We definitely dedicate this live stream to Wayne. He's definitely missed, and he was definitely a delight of the room. So yeah, it's very sad that he won't be with us anymore. Other than that, guys, thank you very much. I'll be back on again over on Patreon tomorrow night for you guys on the Sunday night, 9 p.m. Irish time. I'm not sure what that is over in New York. I think it's around 5 p.m., 6 p.m. over in New York and Boston. Tomorrow night's subject on Patreon is the Knights Templars and the Knights Hospitallers in Ireland. So I'll be covering the various religious orders in Ireland, and I'll also be covering the Crusades as well. I have a video as well on my live stream now of a presentation I'd done last week on the Crusaders in Ireland. The Crusades in Ireland and stuff. So basically, if you want to know the background of Irish people going on crusade and stuff, I have the presentation about that last week. This week's presentation tomorrow night is going to be on the Knights Hospitallers and the Knights Crusaders, Knights Templars and Knights Hospitallers. If you want to be a part of that class, head on over to my Patreon, or just head on over to my Patreon anyway for Nosy if you want to have a check out that. That's about 20 quid a month. Not bad, because that's a presentation every Sunday, which will be recorded and will be there for anybody who pays the 20 quid if you want to watch the live recording. So even if you missed the class, you can watch the live recording again. And I always get back to anybody who's asking any questions on that as well. So definitely head on over there. Owen, do you have a way, because you were talking a lot in that one and you were taking a blunt of a lot of the conversation. Is there any way I can support your work, especially to do with the likes of the O'Neills, the 9 Years' War, or any of your linguistic work as well?
Sort of subscribe to my YouTube channel, watch videos, leave comments, etc. I have a Buy Me a Coffee account, which you can find on the details on my Forrest Fast. It's Buy Me a Coffee /Forrest Fasta, but it's on all my videos. I should have a new video coming out Tuesday or Wednesday. It's about Ireland moving from pagan to Christian. And then I'll be doing a live stream sometime next week. I'm restricted a lot at the moment because I'm driving my daughter to sports Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so it's on Saturday, so it's difficult. But that's the best way to support me.
Happy days. And Michal, you didn't do very much in this one, and you did a terrible job controlling the computer and stuff. But if somebody has pity on you for such a terrible time that you're having, how do we support your channel?
Anyone that has pity on me and wants to put me out of my misery, just treat me like cattle and just the back of the head. No, I mean just. I mean, to my members who are here tonight, my paying members, I'm so sorry that I have neglected you over this from the holiday periods onwards. I will do better, but in the meantime, until Kat has got me by the scruff of the neck and is making sure I work hard. So for now, just I suppose just to keep it simple, just like the shorts that I'm putting out. Follow on all socials like Instagram and TikTok, and until such a time that I become a grown up and do my part for you guys. So just watch and like for now, and ask your questions, please. I'm happy to any questions on families, their origins, especially. Just just fire them in the comment section, and I will get back to them as soon as I can.
Yes, 100%. And you guys constantly, I was only joking about that earlier, Mihal. You guys constantly always annoy me about the various families and clans of Ireland. There he is, Mihal. Go over to his channel, Clans and Dynasties, and subscribe and annoy him about all your questions to do with the Irish families and clans, not just in Ireland, but in Scotland as well. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for all your support today. It means so much to myself, Owen O'Neill, and Mihal. And I'll see you again. Slán go on, yeah. Bye, guys.
And
See ya.
a shout out to Cat's
Slán.
mom who's watching
Bye.
us today.
Yes,
I hope you
Cat's
get-
mom.
I hope you get better. I hope you get better.
Yes, and don't get snowed in. So.